trip to find my prized possession gone. When I asked where my car was, my mom actually sneered, saying, "Thanks to your car, our daughter is having the time of her life." I chuckled and she snapped, "What is so funny?" Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family members who think your possessions are theirs to use however they want. Trust me, you'll want to see how this all played out. My name is Danielle Carter, and classic American muscle cars have been my obsession since childhood. I'm 28 years old now, and I worked 70-hour weeks for 5 years straight to finally buy my dream car, a gorgeous 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. My family has always been supportive, but sometimes they cross boundaries without thinking. My love affair with classic cars began when I was just 7 years old. Every Saturday morning, my grandfather would pick me up in his rumbling old Chevy pickup and take me to his garage in suburban Detroit, where he restored vintage automobiles. Those mornings were sacred to me. While other kids were watching cartoons, I was learning how to change oil, replace spark plugs, and identify engine parts. "Danny," my grandfather would say, using his special nickname for me, "cars aren't just machines. They have personalities, souls." I believed him completely, especially when he showed me his prized possession, a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda in stunning plum crazy purple. The curves of that car, the purr of its engine, the way light danced across its polished surface, it was pure magic to me. "Someday," I whispered to myself the first time I saw it, "I'll own one exactly like this." It was a promise I made to myself that day, one that would shape my future in ways I could never have imagined. My parents, Richard and Susan, never quite understood my unfeminine interest in cars. "Why can't you be interested in dance or art?" my mother would sigh whenever I came home with grease under my fingernails. My father would just shake his head with a mixture of confusion and mild disappointment. Their reaction to my sister, Brooklyn, was completely different. For years younger than me, Brooklyn was everything I wasn't in their eyes: delicate, traditionally feminine, and interested in all the right things. When she wanted ballet lessons at age 6, my parents immediately enrolled her in the most expensive studio in town. When I asked for auto shop classes at 12, my mother scoffed and said we couldn't afford extracurriculars that year. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Brooklyn got designer clothes, I got hand-me-downs. Brooklyn got a sweet 16 party with 50 guests, I got a cake and a card. Brooklyn got a brand new Honda Civic for graduation, I got college application fee waivers and a lecture about student loans. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. This wasn't her fault, but the disparity in how we were treated was impossible to ignore. I moved away from college at Northwestern University, determined to create my own path. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA in finance. After graduation, I landed a position at a prestigious investment bank in Chicago. The hours were brutal, but the compensation was worth it. I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates and brown bagging my lunch every day. Every extra dollar went into my savings account, earmarked for one specific purpose: my dream car. While colleagues splurged on designer clothes and exotic vacations, I kept my eyes on the prize. 5 years of 70-plus-hour work weeks, minimal social life, and disciplined saving. And then finally, after years of searching online forums and auction sites, I found it. A 1970 Plymouth Barracuda in plum crazy purple, just like my grandfather's. The owner was a collector in Wisconsin who was downsizing his collection. The price: $78,000. Every penny I had penny. The day I drove that car home was one of the most emotional of my life. My grandfather had passed away 2 years earlier, but I felt his presence beside me in the passenger seat as I cruised down Lakeshore Drive. "We did it, Grandpa," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. That car represented more than just a purchase to me. It was a testament to my hard work, my independence, and most importantly, a connection to the man who had believed in me when no one else did. My boyfriend, Tyler, understood this perfectly. We met at a classic car show 6 months after I bought the Barracuda. He owned a tribute 1970 Barracuda modern car built to look like the classic original. Unlike my family, Tyler got it. He understood why I'd rather spend a Saturday afternoon changing my own oil than shopping at the mall. He respected the sentimental value of my car and shared my passion for preserving automotive history. For 2 years, that car was my pride and joy. I babied it, drove it only on perfect weather days, and stored it properly during Chicago's harsh winters. Never once did I imagine that the greatest threat to my beloved Barracuda would come not from the elements or thieves, but from my own family. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. My boss, Victoria, wanted me in her office immediately. As I walked the long corridor to her corner office, my mind raced through possible scenarios, most of them negative. Was I let go? Had I made a mistake on the Henderson account? Danielle, Victoria said as I entered, her expression unreadable. How's your Japanese? I blinked in surprise. Conversational at best. I took 3 years in college. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good enough. I need you in Tokyo. Morrison Financial is looking to expand its Asian portfolio, and they specifically requested someone who understands both American and Japanese business culture. This was huge. Morrison Financial was a potential client worth $1 million to our firm. Landing them would mean bonuses, promotions, and serious career advancement. The senior partners and I agreed you're the best person for this. You'll lead the presentation team in Tokyo. I was speechless. Senior colleagues with decades more experience were being passed over for me. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. It's a 3-week trip, Victoria continued. You leave on Friday. My assistant will email you the details. 3 weeks away from home was longer than I'd ever been gone. While I was thrilled about the opportunity, my mind immediately went to my Barracuda. My neighborhood in Lincoln Park had experienced a rash of car break-ins recently, and the thought of leaving my baby unattended for that long made me nervous. After considering various options, I decided the safest place would be at my parents' suburban home in Naperville. They had a spacious garage, a quiet neighborhood with low crime rates, and despite our complicated relationship, I trusted them to at least provide safe storage. That Thursday evening, I drove the 40 minutes to my parents' house. Dad was mowing the lawn when I pulled up, and he stopped to admire the Barracuda as I parked in the driveway. Still a beauty, he said, running his hand along the hood. Your grandfather would be proud.
Mom appeared at the front door, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Danielle, what a surprise. Are you staying for dinner? I explained about the Tokyo trip and my request to leave the car in their garage for 3 weeks. Of course, Dad said immediately. We have plenty of room since Brooklyn moved her things to her new apartment. That's wonderful news about your trip, Mom added, though I could tell she didn't fully grasp the significance of the opportunity. But 3 weeks is such a long time. Will your boss be upset if you come home for the weekend in between? I explained that international business didn't work that way, and eventually she seemed to understand. As Dad helped me move the Barracuda into the garage, I gave him detailed instructions. It needs to be started once a week and allowed to run for 15 minutes, but please don't drive it. The insurance situation is complicated. Also, be sure to use this specific cover, I said, showing him the custom-fitted car cover I'd brought. And whatever you do, don't let anyone else touch it. Danielle, I know how to take care of a car, Dad said, slightly offended. I'll treat it like it's made of gold. I know, Dad. I just worry. This car means everything to me. That night at dinner, Brooklyn joined us. She'd recently graduated from DePaul University and was working as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm, her first real job. Throughout dinner, she talked about how stressful work was and how desperately she needed a vacation. All my friends are planning this amazing European river cruise, she sighed dramatically. But I just can't afford it on my salary. Life is so unfair. I bit my tongue, remembering how I'd worked multiple jobs throughout college without complaint. Mom predictably made sympathetic noises and suggested Dad might be able to help with the cost. We'll see, Dad said non-committally. Money's tight right now with the kitchen renovation. Before leaving, I called Tyler to finalize our car security plan. We discussed having him swap our cars as an extra precaution since his tribute Barracuda looked nearly identical to mine but was worth significantly less. I'll come by your parents' place tomorrow and make the switch, he confirmed. I'll take good care of your baby, and they'll never know the difference. You're the best, I told him. I'll call you when I land in Tokyo. The next morning, I boarded my flight, feeling confident that my car was in good hands. Little did I know that my careful planning would set in motion a chain of events that would forever change my family dynamics. During my 3 weeks in Tokyo, I called home regularly. Mom and Dad always assured me everything was fine, though in the final days of my trip, Mom's messages became somewhat cryptic. "We have a big surprise for when you get home," she texted, which I assumed meant a welcome home dinner or something equally innocuous. The Tokyo presentation was a resounding success. The Morrison executives were impressed with our proposal, and by the end of the second week, they'd signed a contract worth $15 million to our firm. At the celebratory dinner on my final night in Japan, Victoria hinted strongly about a promotion waiting for me back in Chicago. "Senior Vice President has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" she said with a knowing smile. I boarded my return flight feeling on top of the world. I couldn't wait to get home, take my Barracuda for a long drive along Lake Michigan, and share my good news with Tyler and my family. The 13-hour flight gave me plenty of time to daydream about my homecoming. My plane landed at O'Hare at 2:15 p.m. on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. After clearing customs and collecting my luggage, I hailed a taxi directly to my parents' house in Naperville. I was exhausted from the long flight but energized by the thought of seeing my beloved Barracuda again. "Just another 10 minutes, I texted Tyler, who'd promised to meet me there to swap our cars back. As the taxi turned onto my parents' street, I felt a flutter of excitement. The driver pulled into the driveway, and I frowned. Something was wrong. The garage door was open, revealing my dad's sedan and Mom's SUV, but no sign of a Barracuda. "Maybe they moved it," I muttered to myself as I paid the driver and wheeled my suitcase to the front door. Mom opened the door before I could knock, greeting me with a hug that I half-heartedly returned, my mind still on the missing car. "Welcome home, sweetheart. How was your flight?" "Fine," I said distractedly. "Mom, where's my car?" A strange expression flickered across her face, a mixture of defensiveness and something else I couldn't quite identify. She ushered me inside without answering. Dad was sitting in his recliner, reading a newspaper. He looked up when I entered, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Dad, where's my Barracuda?" I asked directly, a knot forming in my stomach. He cleared his throat and glanced at Mom, who had busied herself arranging cookies on a plate as if this were a normal homecoming. "Well, honey," he began, his voice unnaturally high, "something came up while you were gone." The knot in my stomach tightened. "What does that mean? Where is my car?" Mom turned then, her chin lifted in that way it always did when she was preparing to defend an indefensible position. "Brooklyn needed some help," she said firmly. "A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What does that have to do with my car?" "Thanks to your car, our daughter is having the time of her life," Mom said with a smile that looked more like a sneer. She pulled out her phone and showed me Brooklyn's Instagram feed. There was my sister, posing on a European river cruise ship, cocktail in hand, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, without a care in the world. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "You sold my car," I whispered, too shocked to even shout. "Now Danielle," Dad began in his placating tone, "try to understand. Brooklyn was going through a really rough time at work. All her friends were going on this cruise, and she was going to be left out. It would have been devastating for her. So you sold my car?" This time I did shout, my voice rising with disbelief. "You can always buy another car," Mom said dismissively. "You make good money. Brooklyn needed this opportunity. She needed to network with the right people, make connections for her career." I felt like I was in some bizarre nightmare. My hands began to shake as the full impact hit me. "That car was registered in my name. You had no legal right to sell it." My parents exchanged a glance. "Well, technically," Dad mumbled, "we told the buyer you were selling it and had authorized us to handle the transaction." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. The room seemed to spin slightly as I tried to process what they'd done. "Do you have any idea what that car meant to me?" My voice cracked. It wasn't just transportation. It was a connection to Grandpa. It was the result of 5 years of sacrifice. "It's just a car, Danielle," Mom said, her tone hardening. "Family is what matters. Brooklyn is your sister. She needed this. And I don't matter? My feelings, my property, my boundaries, none of that counts. Don't be so dramatic, Mom scoffed. You've always been so materialistic, so focused on things. Brooklyn is struggling with depression. The cruise was therapeutic for her. Depression? I echoed incredulously. Since when? She's been very stressed at work, Dad offered weakly. Her boss is demanding. I laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. Welcome to adult life. I worked 70-hour weeks for 5 years to afford that car. Did you ever once consider selling your possessions to make my life easier? That's different, Mom said, growing defensive. You've always been the strong one. Brooklyn is sensitive. She needs more support. The double standard was so blatant it took my breath away. For a moment, I just stood there, trembling with rage and disbelief. Then a thought occurred to me. How much did you sell it for? I demanded. More uncomfortable glances between my parents. Finally, Dad answered, $45,000. I gasped. $45,000? That car was worth $78,000. Did you do any research at all before selling it? The buyer said that was a fair price, Dad muttered. We needed to move quickly before you came home. That statement, so naked in its betrayal, hit me like a physical blow. They deliberately rushed the sale to present me with a fait accompli. They'd known exactly what they were doing. Who did you sell it to? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Some collector from Indiana, Mom said vaguely. I don't remember his name. My phone buzzed with a text. It was Tyler, just pulled up. Where's Barracuda? And suddenly, during my anger and heartbreak, a realization dawned on me. A realization that would change everything. The text from Tyler triggered something in my brain that had been pushed aside in the shock of discovering my parents' betrayal. I started to laugh softly at first, then louder. The sound was strange even to my own ears' release of tension rather than an expression of joy. My mother's face was contorted with confusion and annoyance. What is so funny about your sister's happiness? She demanded. I took a deep breath, trying to collect myself. You know what's funny, Mom? You stole and sold a car that wasn't mine. Dad frowned. What are you talking about? We saw you drive it here. I held up a finger, signaling them to wait, and stepped outside to greet Tyler, who was now standing in the driveway looking confused. After a brief exchange, he followed me back inside, equally curious to hear my explanation. Mom, Dad, you remember Tyler, right? I gestured to my boyfriend, who nodded tersely at my parents, his expression guarded. Of course, Mom said impatiently. Danielle, what do you mean the car wasn't yours? I smiled, feeling a strange calm settle over me. The car you sold wasn't my 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. It was Tyler's tribute car. The color drained from both my parents' faces as I explained the car-swapping arrangement Tyler and I had made for security purposes. The day after I left for Tokyo, Tyler had come by as planned and swapped his tribute Barracuda for my authentic one. To the untrained eye, they looked identical, but Tyler's car was worth about $25,000, not $78,000. So you see, I concluded, you didn't sell my car. My car has been safely stored in Tyler's climate-controlled garage for the past 3 weeks. What you sold was Tyler's car, without his knowledge or consent. But, my father stammered, it looked exactly like yours. That was the point, Tyler said, speaking for the first time. They're supposed to look the same from the outside. But mine is a tribute built in 2015 to look like a 70 Barracuda. Danielle's is an authentic classic worth nearly 3 times as much. Oh my God, my mother whispered, sinking into a chair. What have we done? You've committed fraud, I said flatly. You sold property that didn't belong to you or to me. You forged documents. You lied to a buyer. We could go to jail, Dad said, his face ashen. Yes, Tyler agreed, his voice hard. Auto theft over $20,000 is a felony in Illinois. Add wire fraud if you received an electronic payment. Each charge carries up to 15 years. Mom began to cry, loud, dramatic sobs that once might have manipulated me into comforting her. Not today. How were we supposed to know it wasn't your car? She wailed. You tricked us. I didn't trick you, I corrected her. I trusted Tyler to protect my property because I knew, on some level, that my own family couldn't be trusted. Clearly, I was right. You have to help us fix this, Dad pleaded, looking suddenly older than his 62 years. We can't go to jail. We didn't know. Ignorance isn't a legal defense, Tyler pointed out. And neither is family loyalty. You sold my car without permission. That's theft, plain and simple. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. I answered it hesitantly. Is this Danielle Carter? A male voice asked. Yes. Who's calling? This is Paul Davidson. I recently purchased a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda from your parents on your behalf. There seems to be a problem with the title transfer. My eyes locked with my parents, who were watching me with naked fear. In that moment, I had a choice to make. I could throw them under the bus immediately, tell this stranger the truth about their theft and fraud, or I could buy some time to figure out a solution that would deliver justice without destroying my family completely. Mr. Davidson, I said carefully, there has indeed been a misunderstanding. Could I call you back within the hour? I need to discuss some details with my parents. He agreed, and I hung up, turning back to the anxious faces watching me. That was your buyer, I informed them. He's having trouble with the title transfer. Probably because the car is registered to Tyler, not to me. Please, Danielle, Mom begged, her makeup streaked with tears. Please help us. We never meant to hurt anyone. Except me, I pointed out. You were perfectly fine hurting me. We thought you'd understand, Dad said weakly. Family helps family. Is that right? I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. Then I guess it's time for you to help Tyler, since you're the ones who stole from him. My parents looked at Tyler with new fear in their eyes, suddenly realizing that their fate rested not just in my hands, but in his as well. What do you want us to do? Dad asked him directly. Tyler crossed his arms, his expression severe. First, I want to know exactly who has my car and how much they paid. Then we can start figuring out how to make this right. As my parents fumbled to find the buyer's information, I stepped outside with Tyler to have a private conversation. Standing in the driveway where my Barracuda should have been, we spoke in hushed tones about our options. I can't believe they did this, he said, shaking his head. Your own parents. Believe it, I said grimly. They've always favored Brooklyn. I just never thought they'd go this far. Do you want to press charges? We could. We'd win. I sighed deeply. I don't want my parents to go to jail. But I don't want them to get away with this either. They need to understand there are consequences. Tyler nodded, taking my hand. We'll figure it out together. Meanwhile, I needed to track down my sister. Brooklyn had been posting daily updates from her European cruise, flaunting her luxurious vacation while remaining completely oblivious to the chaos she'd left behind. After multiple attempts, I finally reached her via the cruise ship's satellite phone. Danielle, she answered, the sounds of music and laughter in the background. Why are you calling? Is something wrong? Yes, Brooklyn. Something is very wrong, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Mom and Dad sold a car to pay for your cruise. A car that didn't belong to them. There was a pause. Then Brooklyn laughed. Oh, is that all? I thought someone was sick or something. Look, I know you're probably upset they sold your precious car, but you can always buy another one. It's not like you can't afford it. Her dismissive attitude made my blood boil. It wasn't my car they sold, Brooklyn. It was Tyler's car. What they did was illegal. They could go to jail. That finally got her attention. Jail? Don't be ridiculous. They were just trying to help me. By committing fraud. By stealing. Those are crimes, Brooklyn. Serious ones. So what are you saying? Her voice had lost its carefree tone, replaced by growing concern. I'm saying you need to come home. Now. Your European adventure is over. But the cruise doesn't end for another week. Then get off at the next port and fly home, I said firmly. This isn't optional, Brooklyn. You need to be part of fixing the mess you helped create. The next day, Tyler and I met with Paul Davidson, a middle-aged classic car enthusiast who had purchased Tyler's tribute Barracuda. He was understandably upset when we explained the situation. "So let me get this straight," he said, his face reddening. "I bought a stolen car with forged documents?" "Technically yes," I admitted, though my parents would argue they thought they had permission to sell it. "That's not how permission works," Mr. Davidson said angrily. "I spent $45,000 on that car. I've already registered it in my name, added it to my insurance. This is a mess." "We understand," Tyler said calmly. "And we want to make it right. We're prepared to offer you a full refund of the $45,000 plus an additional $5,000 for the inconvenience and any expenses you've incurred." Mr. Davidson seemed slightly mollified by this offer. "And what about the car?" "We'd need it returned," I explained. "It legally belongs to Tyler." After some negotiation, Mr. Davidson agreed to our terms, with the condition that the money be wired to his account before he released the car. Now we just needed my parents to come up with $50,000. When we presented this solution to my parents, they were simultaneously relieved and horrified. $50,000? My mother repeated, aghast. "Where are we supposed to get that kind of money?" "You mentioned a home equity loan," I reminded them. "Or you could sell some of your investments." "This isn't my problem to solve, Mom. You created this situation." "But we don't have that much equity in the house," Dad protested. "The market's been down, and with the kitchen renovation costs." "Then I suggest you start looking at other options," Tyler said firmly. "Because right now, this is the only thing standing between you and potential criminal charges." "We could maybe come up with $40,000, Dad offered after a hushed conversation with Mom, "but not 50. Tyler shook his head. "Not good enough. The full amount needs to be repaid, plus compensation for my time and stress. If you can't come up with it, perhaps Brooklyn should contribute since she benefited from the theft." "Brooklyn?" Mom looked shocked at the suggestion. "But she's just starting her career. She barely makes enough to cover her rent." "Then she shouldn't be taking European cruises, should she?" I pointed out. "Actions have consequences, Mom. For everyone, not just for me." Brooklyn had reluctantly returned from her cruise early, and when we explained that she'd need to contribute $10,000 to the restitution, her reaction was predictably dramatic. "Why am I being punished?" she demanded. "I didn't sell the car." "No, you just manipulated Mom and Dad into funding a luxury vacation you couldn't afford," I replied. "You're 24 years old, Brooklyn. An adult. It's time you started acting like one." "That's not fair. You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more." The room fell silent at her outburst. Even our parents looked shocked. "Is that what you think?" I asked quietly. "That they love you more?" "Well, they've always given me more," she said, her voice smaller now. "They've always protected me, made things easier for me." "And look how that's turned out," I said, not unkindly. "You're 24 and you can't support yourself. You manipulate them into bailing you out whenever life gets hard. That's not love, Brooklyn. That's enabling." My mother started to protest, but my father placed a hand on her arm, stopping her. For perhaps the first time, he seemed to be truly listening. "Danielle's right," he said slowly. "We haven't done you any favors, Brooklyn. We thought we were protecting you, but we've just kept you from learning how to stand on your own." It took 2 more days of tense negotiations, but eventually a plan was formed. My parents would take out a home equity loan for $35,000. Brooklyn would contribute $10,000 from her savings, which I suspected had been largely funded by my parents over the years, and they'd sell my mother's expensive jewelry collection to cover the remaining $5,000. Tyler insisted on one additional condition, a formal written apology acknowledging what they'd done and promising never to touch or make decisions about our property again. This would be signed and notarized, providing an additional layer of protection should anything similar happen in the future. My parents balked at this last requirement. "An apology is one thing," Mom said, "but a notarized document seems extreme." "Not as extreme as prison," Tyler countered. "This is non-negotiable." With no other options, they eventually agreed to all our terms. 1 month after the car crisis, I found myself sitting at my parents' dining room table for a family dinner. The atmosphere was different from our gatherings before the incidental mixture of cautious optimism and lingering tension that reflected our new reality. Dad placed a platter of grilled chicken on the table, his hands bearing calluses from the weekend construction job he'd taken to help repay the home equity loan. Mom followed with a bowl of salad, her once manicured nails now plain and trimmed short. Her diamond rings were noticeably absent, sold to help make restitution. Brooklyn texted that she's running 10 minutes late, Mom said, checking her phone. Something about traffic from downtown. My sister had started a new job 2 weeks earlier, an entry-level position at an advertising agency that paid less than her previous job but offered better advancement opportunities. To her credit, she hadn't complained once about the early mornings or demanding workload. Tyler sat beside me, having been invited by my parents as a gesture of reconciliation. He'd been hesitant to accept, but I'd encouraged him. They need to see us as a unit, I'd explained, to understand that hurting you means hurting me. Conversation during dinner was initially stilted, focusing on safe topics like the weather and neighborhood news. But gradually, as we relaxed, more meaningful exchanges emerged. I spoke with Uncle George yesterday, Dad mentioned as he served himself seconds. He's thinking about selling his old Mustang. Says he's too old to keep maintaining it. That's a shame, I replied. That car's been in the family forever. Dad nodded, then cleared his throat. I was thinking maybe I could buy it from him. Fix it up. His eyes met mine briefly before darting away, uncharacteristically shy. I know it's not a classic Barracuda, but I thought maybe if you were interested, we could work on it together. I know I never showed much interest in your car passion before, but I'd like to learn if you're willing to teach me. The offer touched me deeply. It wasn't just about the car, it was Dad making an effort to connect with me on my terms, to understand something that mattered to me. I'd like that, I said sincerely. Mom watched this exchange with a small smile. Over the past month, she'd been making her own efforts to change. The family therapy sessions we'd been attending weekly had helped her recognize her pattern of boundary violations and favoritism. I made something for you, Tyler, she said, rising from the table and retrieving a gift bag from the sideboard. Just a small token. Tyler accepted the bag with polite curiosity, pulling out a framed document. It was the title to his tribute, Barracuda, along with a handwritten note promising never to interfere with his or my property again. I had it professionally framed, Mom explained. As a reminder to myself as much as a gift to you. Boundaries matter. I'm still learning that. Thank you, Susan, Tyler said, using my mother's first name as she'd recently invited him to do. I appreciate the gesture. The front door opened, and Brooklyn hurried in, slightly breathless. Sorry, I'm late. The client meeting ran long, and then traffic was a nightmare. She hung up her coat and joined us at the table, looking more mature somehow in her business attire. Her previously highlighted hair was now its natural brown, a cost-cutting measure, she'd explained. The most striking change, however, was in her demeanor. Gone was the entitlement that had characterized her interactions before the incident. In its place was a newfound awareness of others and her impact on them. How was your day, Danielle? She asked after greeting everyone. Before the car incident, she rarely showed interest in my life. Good, I replied. Busy. The Morrison account is demanding, but it's coming together. That's the one in Tokyo, right? The one that got you the promotion. I nodded, surprised she'd remembered that detail. Senior Vice President of International Accounts, I confirmed. Still getting used to the title. That's really impressive, she said, and for once, there was no undercurrent of competition or resentment in her voice. Just genuine pride. As dinner progressed, I found myself observing my family with new eyes. The changes were subtle but significant. Dad asks permission before serving more food onto Mom's plate. Mom catches herself before speaking for Brooklyn. Brooklyn is offering to help with dishes without being prompted. These were small things, perhaps inconsequential to an outsider. But to me, they represented a fundamental shift in our family dynamics. The painful experience we'd endured had forced us to confront long-established patterns of behavior that had damaged our relationships. After dessert, as Tyler and I prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway. I know I've said this before, she began, her voice low and serious, but I'm truly sorry, Danielle. Not just for the car accident, but for all the times I dismissed your feelings, your passions, your boundaries. I always thought I was being a good mother by treating you and Brooklyn differently, by pushing you to be strong and protecting her from challenges. I see now how unfair that was to both of you. I studied her face, noting the genuine remorse in her eyes. Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot. Do you think you'll ever be able to fully forgive us? She asked hesitantly. I considered the question carefully. I think forgiveness is a process, not a single moment. I'm working on it, and seeing you all make real changes helps. She nodded, accepting this incomplete but honest answer. As Tyler and I drove home in my Barracuda, the familiar rumble of the engine comforting, the car had taken on new meaning for me now. It was still my connection to my grandfather, still the symbol of my hard work and persistence, but it had also become a catalyst for necessary change in my family. A painful but ultimately healing confrontation with long-buried issues. Penny, for your thoughts, Tyler asked, noticing my contemplative mood. I was just thinking about how sometimes the things we value most can become tests of character, I replied. This car revealed truths about my family that were hard to face but maybe needed to be faced. Do you regret any of it? The way we handled things? I shook my head. No. It would have been easier to just let them off the hook completely, to avoid the conflict, but that would have just reinforced the same unhealthy patterns. They needed to experience real consequences, and I needed to stand firm in my boundaries. I think you found a good balance, Tyler said. Holding them accountable without cutting them off completely. That takes strength. And support, I added, squeezing his hand. I couldn't have done it without you. The next morning, I took the Barracuda for a long drive along Lake Michigan, something I'd done countless times before. But today felt different. As the wind rushed through my hair and the sun glinted off the car's polished plum crazy purple hood, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The car was still just a car, an object of metal and rubber and glass. But what it represented had evolved. Now it symbolizes not just my connection to the past, but my commitment to my own worth. My refusal to be diminished or disregarded, even by those who claim to love me. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from this entire ordeal was learning that standing up for yourself doesn't mean abandoning those you love. It means loving them enough to establish boundaries that allow for mutual respect and growth. It means finding the strength to say, "This is not acceptable," while still leaving room for reconciliation. As I pulled back into my apartment complex, I thought about the journey our family had embarked on. The therapy sessions, the difficult conversations, the small daily choices to do better. None of it was easy, but all of it was necessary. The road ahead wouldn't be perfectly smooth. Old habits die hard, and there would inevitably be setbacks and disagreements. But for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I felt hopeful about my family's future, confident that we were moving in the right direction. And that, more than any car or possession, was truly priceless. 6 months later, I stood in my parents' garage beside Dad, our hands covered in motor oil as we worked on Uncle George's 1965 Ford Mustang. The car was a project, far from the pristine condition of my Barracuda, but that was exactly what made it perfect for us. "Hand me that socket wrench," Dad said, and I complied, watching as he carefully removed the spark plugs we'd been discussing replacing. "You're getting good at this," I observed, genuinely impressed by how much he'd learned. He smiled, wiping his hands on an old rag. "I had a good teacher. Your grandfather would have been proud to see us working together like this." Brooklyn appeared in the garage doorway, dressed in her work clothes and carrying 2 cups of coffee. The past months had transformed her in ways I never could have imagined. She'd been promoted twice at her agency and had moved into her own apartment, truly her own, without parental financial assistance. "Coffee break," she offered, and we gratefully accepted the steaming mugs. "How's the campaign coming along?" I asked about her latest project. "Crazy busy, but good crazy," she replied, settling onto Dad's workbench. "I actually wanted to ask you something, Danielle. My boss mentioned they're looking for someone with international business experience for a client presentation. I know it's not your field exactly, but would you be willing to give me some advice on dealing with multinational corporations?" The old Brooklyn never would have asked for my professional advice. She would have been too proud, too convinced that she already knew everything she needed to know. "Of course," I said. "Let's set up lunch this week and go over it." Tyler appeared in the garage, having just returned from a weekend car show with his tribute Barracuda. "How's the Mustang coming along?" he asked, examining our progress. "Slowly but surely," Dad replied. "Danielle's teaching me patience along with mechanical skills." Both valuable lessons, Tyler agreed with a grin. That evening, as we all sat around my parents' dinner table, a tradition that had become more meaningful since our family crisis, I reflected on how much had changed. Not just the obvious things, like Brooklyn's independence and my parents' new respect for boundaries, but the subtler shifts in how we related to each other. There was more honesty now, fewer unspoken assumptions. When disagreements arose, we addressed them directly rather than letting resentment simmer. My parents asked before giving advice. Brooklyn contributed to conversations rather than dominating them. And I had learned to advocate for myself without guilt. I have some news, I announced as Mom served dessert. Victoria offered me the position of Vice President of Global Operations. It would mean more travel, but also the chance to establish our presence in new markets. That's wonderful, Dad exclaimed, and the pride in his voice was genuine. Will you take it? Mom asked. I'm thinking about it. The timing feels right. Whatever you decide, we support you, she said, and I knew she meant it. As we cleared the dishes together, all of us, without anyone having to ask, I thought about the unexpected gift that had emerged from one of the most painful experiences of my life. We were still the same people, with the same basic personalities and quirks. But we were better versions of ourselves, tempered by consequence and shaped by the choice to change. Later that night, sitting in my apartment with Tyler, I pulled out a photo of my grandfather standing beside his Barracuda. He was young in the picture, probably not much older than I was now, with motor oil under his fingernails and a satisfied smile on his face. Do you think he would approve of how things turned out? I showed Tyler the photo, asking him to look. Tyler studied the picture thoughtfully. I think he'd be proud that you fought for what mattered to you. But more than that, I think he'd be proud that you found a way to bring your family together through your shared love of cars. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The Barracuda had always been my connection to Grandpa. Still, now the old Mustang in my parents' garage had become something new, a bridge between past and future, a symbol of healing and growth, and a reminder that the best journeys are the ones we take together. Underscore 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 underscore. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed your boundaries? How did you balance holding them accountable while maintaining the relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you navigate your own family dynamics with courage and compassion.